a lot of the things that we were being trained to use to diagnose a sex addiction in someone were things that myself and other really healthy individuals were doing. So I started to notice that we very much pathologize what's on the fringe. And that's where I actually believe a lot of mental health and authenticity lives. I think conformity is not a sign of health. Most people move through the world either doing what we're supposed to do or what everyone else is doing, authoritarianism or conformism. And I think authenticity is really a good guide for mental health. And so when I wrote my first book, Sex Outside the Lines, I really wanted to kind of honor that. I wanted content and form to align. I wanted the name, I wanted the languaging, I wanted the concepts. And individuals that I work with clinically are those that feel on the fringes. And because of that, really don't feel as though they fit in or they can be seen as mentally healthy. And so one of the activistic missions in my work is to really normalize diverse creative ways of being.
Mm-hmm. So when you have someone, and you have like this large cultural narrative that there is sex addiction and there is porn addiction. Yes. What are your opinions on that? Because I don't think that's what it is. I think it's more of a compulsion issue or some kind of avoidance, like a means of avoidance. What's your take on this?
I agree. I think that's very much what it is. Mm-hmm. There's some individuals that I think what they deem to be a sex addiction is shame around what they're turned on by. Mm-hmm. And so all they really need is psychoeducation and to have it normalized that what you're interested in is quite okay. And a wealth of people also might seek that out. I try to, in my work and in some of my presentations, use stats from porn search engines to show people that the majority of what people are looking for is very colorful, diverse stuff. Mm-hmm. And that can be very normalizing. Other individuals, it's about their rate of use, and some people have a higher sex drive, some people have more free time. Some individuals, they're using sex as a form of coping, and that's acceptable and that's appropriate.
Is that because I hear some people are like, you need a coping mechanism, there's something wrong and broken with you?
Yeah, there's this idea culturally that we should always be able to turn to ourselves, and I think that would be phenomenal, but often life will throw something at us that is far bigger than what we have the internal resources to deal with. And I like the idea of us turning to people, co-regulation, and using relationships and friends and family members and partners to kind of process and to hold us and to get us through. And I also think sometimes we need to use things like jogging, reading, meditation, sexuality as a way to soothe our nervous system and to kind of bring us back down. And I think that there's got to be an acceptability in that. But as you know, sex is always a special case. You could fill in the blank with any form of soothing, and people probably find a way to make that make sense. Shopping, exercising, food, even at times, although that's a punchy one.
Yeah.
But sex, they're like, hold on a minute. You know what I mean? That can't be okay. And I also saw that a lot of sex workers or individuals that were using sex workers, that inherently was seen often as a sex addiction, that there could be no other way to conceptualize that career or that use. And I think that's a really important part of the sex addiction, challenge. But compulsivity exists for sure. There are people that food, exercise, shopping can just feel a little out of control to them. And so there can be some really beautiful healing work in looking at what it is they're seeking in those activities, and are there other healthier, maybe more sustainable ways to get those needs met?
And is there an element or any kind of correlation between narcissism, like actual narcissism, and sex addiction, like quote sex addiction?
Yeah. Narcissism is a funny word, right? Because we sling that around.
It's
culturally.
overused so much, yeah.
If you do something I'm upset by, you're a narcissist.
No, I mean in the diagnosable way, like someone who's actually diagnosed.
Thank you for saying it like that. Because I think we really kind of sling it around.
Like, you're a jerk, you must be a narcissist. Like, no, we all have a little bit of that. If you take that dark triad, everyone's going to have a percentage in all of that. It doesn't mean you're broken, doesn't mean you're bad.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it's very normal, but to actually be diagnosed, that is a totally different animal.
Yes, completely clinical.
Yes.
And is there a connection to that in sex addiction? I'm sorry, ask your question again.
So do you see a correlation between actual narcissists, diagnosed narcissists, and sex addiction? Because I've had friends that were with someone that was a claimed sex addict, and what I see is just narcissistic behavior. There's so many steps that are required to hire somebody, and that was this person's modality. So he was just using professionals constantly all the time. I'm like, that's a lot of work, that's a lot of money, and he just seems to not give a shit about your feelings. There just seems to be like zero empathy. So for me, I see just more narcissistic behavior and not this other thing.
Because the question could be, why is this individual unable or unwilling to seek out sexuality in some form that doesn't require them to have control via payment or service provided? What is the inner, deeper work? And that's why I love using sex therapeutically, because I think that question is what brings us into the deeper pieces. What is that? Why is that person engaging in that process? And is there a diagnosis that is getting unaddressed when we just focus on maybe being sex addiction? Is that person do they have intimacy phobia? Again, do they need to be in control because vulnerability is something that's scary to them? How then does that play out outside of sex? How good of a friend could they be? How good of a boss could they be if they're not able to be intimate, to be vulnerable, to honor other forms of relationality? Because you're right, sex worker use could sometimes be sociopathy, it could be narcissism, it could be a host of things. And so that question is powerful.